Hello everyone, in this chapter, we will learn about event. Event is one of the most important knowledge points in HiCode. All our logic is completed through event, which is also the basis of our zero-code programming. In this section, we first learn that the basic event foundation consists of the following 4 parts. The first part is the definition of event. Then we will learn the 4 most important elements of event. Then we will learn how to add event. Finally, we will explain the common operations of event. First of all, let's take a look at the definition of event. The definition of event is very simple. In a word, event refers to what happens to the application, and the application makes its response to it. Let's take a look at a few examples here. For example, when the mouse moves in, the background turns red. We can see that the mouse moves in is an event that occurs in the application. Then, the response to this event is to make the background turn red. The same application can also happen when the button is clicked. Then, the response it needs to make is let the page jump. Similarly, click the button here to change the text of the button. What happens is that its button is clicked. Its response is to make a change in the text of the button. So we can find that the so-called event is that there is a cause before and a result after. There is a trigger before and a result after. We take the trigger before, and there is a logical base point of execution behind. Let's look at the 4 elements of event. The 4 elements mainly include the following 4 parts: our punishment object, trigger event, and our target object target action. In our HiCode, all the interaction development is to decompose it into the combination chain of several events and define the above 4 elements for each event. Here, we first introduce a 4 element of ours. The so-called trigger object is that all controls in Ivy can be used as our penalty object, and the so-called trigger condition is the operation that can be recognized by this control. Here is a simple example. For example, if a button can be clicked, clicking is its trigger condition. If a button can be moved in with a mouse, then the mouse can be moved in with such a condition. Then the input box can have an event such as input change or missing. This is a unique operation of our input box. But for the button, it has no way to identify the input content, so the button does not have such a trigger condition. Generally speaking, all the starting conditions that a widget can have are enumerated for you in HiCode. Then we have a target object. The target object can also select all the widget in HiCode as its target object. The target action refers to the series of actions that the widget will perform. If we look at these parts in this way, they may appear a little abstract. So let's use some examples here to help you understand one of our 4 elements. First of all, based on our memory, let's recall what the 4 elements of the event we just said mean. Including one of our penalty objects, trigger event, target object, and target action. Then we will allocate the so-called 4 elements of event through a series of logical base points. Let's first click on the text to make it red. We assign one of its 4 elements to such a logic. Here we can make a draft. Let's take a look at this part. When we click on the text to make the text red, let's first find out what the punishment object is. Who did you click on? You clicked on the text, didn't you? So one of its trigger objects is our text. Let's point it to the past and trigger an event when it is clicked. So what is its trigger event? It's our click, isn't it? What is its target? Just let the text be himself, right? So let's point the text to one of our target objects, and then turn red. What's the whole? It's a target action, right? So in fact, in the final analysis, we can translate this sentence into a by sentence, that is, when the text is clicked, let's turn the text itself into a red. You see, in this way, we can allocate one of its 4 elements. So in such a sentence, we can find out its 4 elements. One of its trigger objects is our text, its trigger event is our top level, its target object is our text, and then its target action is one of our turns into red. In such a sentence, we give it down, and we will do it later in event. Okay, next, let's look at the next logic. Click the button to jump to page 2. Okay, let's assign 4 elements to this logic. First of all, Who is the target of punishment? It's a button. It's clicked, isn't it? So one of its buttons is a penalty object. It is a click event of what event is executed, right? So it is said that one of its trigger event is click, and then it is strange to jump to page 2. What is the sentence like to jump to the page? Is it like an action it is going to perform, so it seems that it cannot find a target object here. So for the page jump event, let's remember separately what one of its target objects is. It's our front end, so it's the only thing we need to remember. It's the only thing we need to remember. So all the jump events are carried out by our front end, so the complete translation of this sentence is to let our front end perform such an operation as jump to page 2 when the button is clicked. When clicked, let the button jump to a page 2. We also give it the same sentence. We'll make such a logic later. Then we will learn how to add an event. The operation process of adding an event is very simple. Here we will learn a text version of the event, and then we will go to the editor for an operation. Its adding process is to select one of our trigger objects in the number of objects, and then click an event icon in the logic toolbar to add an event for such a widget. Then we select a trigger condition in the pull menu under our world panel, and then click the mouse symbol to select a target object in the number of our objects, and then we select a target action through the drop-down menu. Okay, then we will also cut down such an operation process, and we will cooperate with such an operation process, as well as the 4 elements that we just assigned, and we will complete our series of additions to the event. Okay, let's open the editor. Here we can choose the default environment. Change the name of the application to our event, and then click our Create button. First of all, we should form a good habit. Let's add a page under the front end, and then we can carry out some operations on the page. Then let's first look at the first sentence of our previous analysis, that is, click the text to turn the text red. Since we need text, when we select the page, we first add a text for it, and we have completed the addition of a text, right? Then we are going to click on the text, and make the text turn into a red color. How do we operate? Let's look at the basis of an event on our side, that is, select our trigger object in the number of objects. Who is our trigger object? It's text, right? So let's select the text here. Now you see that there is a selected style in the number of objects here, so it is selected. Then click the event icon in the logic toolbar. Where is this? In fact, it is an exclamation mark in the upper right corner. We click it. You can see that we add a world for such a text, and then select its trigger condition in the drop-down menu of the world panel. We can see that we select it in the drop-down menu of the touch event here. What do we want to select here? You can see that it says to execute when clicking, right? So for us, in a trigger event here, we will select one of its clicks, and then his next operation is to click the mouse symbol to select a target object in the number of objects. You see, when we click on such a mouse symbol, we will carefully observe the number of objects on the right side. Does it turn into a golden color? This way, we can tell you that when the number of objects on the right side turns into a golden color, in fact, we should select a widget in the number of objects. Let's see who we're going to choose here. It's to make the text turn red. Who the text is himself, right? So when the number of objects on this side turns to golden yellow, we can click him again to see that we have selected a text, and then we will select the target action in the drop-down menu. What is the target action? Is to turn yourself into a red, right? So we choose one of its setting properties in the drop-down menu. Then in the setting property, we change a text color into a red color, and then click 1 to finish. Finally, we click such a blank place to let it be collected, so we can complete a complete logical definition, and the logic is very complete. It is easy to read. You can see that an event is added to the text. When the text is clicked, let the text set its own property to change its own color into a red color. Is the actual effect like this? We can preview it. Here we open the check. We can see that there is our text here. Let's click on such a text, and we can see that it turns red. Does it confirm the logic we wrote? When we click on the text, it turns itself into a red color, which is completely consistent with the content of the event defined here. Let's do the same again. The second logic we wrote is to jump to page 2 when we click the button. Here we have only one page 1. So we add another page under the front end. This is our page 2. Then we give him a background color for page 1, which is pink. Then page 2 also gives him a background color, which is green color to distinguish two pages. Then when I click the button again, I will jump to the page. Then we will first add such a button under the page. Clicking the button to jump to the page is actually to jump to the page when the button is clicked, so who is the object of punishment? That's the button, right? So we can select such a button, or we can directly select such a button in the object book. Select this button to add the method of event to it, select it, and we can click such an exclamation point in the upper right corner. Okay, what are its punishment conditions? It's a click, right? So when this button is clicked, it will jump to the page. To jump to the page, who will perform this action? You can see who is in charge of the two pages, whether they are in charge of the front end or not, so the page is subject to the unified scheduling of the front end, so it is easy for us to think about it. In fact, if we want to jump to the page, we need to find the front end to perform the action, and then this side to perform one of its actions is called jump to the page, and then this side asks you to jump to the page. Which page do you go to? Look, there's another symbol of the mouse here, right? So we are choosing a symbol like mouse to jump to page 2. Here are some places to give you a special explanation. The first is our drop-down triangle. The drop-down triangle in HeCode is our drop-down menu, which contains a series of options prefabricated by HeCode. For example, our trigger event is selected through the drop-down menu. For this widget, we think it can have trigger event, which we have written here. Then, for different components, the trigger event is totally different, which is very easy to understand. For example, in the input box, you can input changes, but you cannot have an event like input changes with a button, right? Then down is the function of mouse click selection, which is the small symbol of a mouse we just saw. Whenever such a mouse style appears in HeCode, we are asked to select an object in the number of objects after clicking this icon. It can be noted that when we click the mouse icon, the number of objects on the right will completely turn yellow, prompting us to make a choice. Here I would like to give you an additional explanation. Generally speaking, where we see a drop-down menu here, let's make a selection in the drop-down menu, and when there is such an arrow in front with the drop-down menu, I recommend that everyone use such an arrow to complete a production, because it will have a very strong logic consistency. When this button is clicked, we will let you see that when you want to let it go, you can click to let the front end and execute a jump page, and then jump to which page and which page. If you click again, there will be a very logical and consistent approach. So in HeCode, whenever you see such an arrow symbol, try to use such an arrow symbol to make a selection in our object book. But here I would like to add a little more. In our drop-down menu, you see, there is also a drop-down menu here. What is the drop-down menu here? What we think you may use is that we all choose from the drop-down menu, and the drop-down menu has a very strong ability of cause and effect. If you get a result through such a special event, the approximate rate is to get a result through the drop-down menu, which I will not start with as we study deeply. We must have a deeper understanding of when we need to use the click selection, and when we use the drop-down menu. Okay, let's learn how to add event. First of all, the first point is to add multiple target objects and target actions under the agreed triggering condition. How do you understand this? We give it down. Let's take a simple example here. For example, such a text. At present, when it is clicked, it makes such a text red. What does it mean if it has multiple target objects and multiple target actions? When this text is clicked, it not only makes itself red, but also makes such a button red. What should we do? So when the same text is clicked, it not only changes the color of such a text, but also changes the color of such a button. Does that involve multiple target objects and target action under the same triggering condition? Then how can we add them? Here is a simple method recommended. We directly click such a plus sign, and you can see that there is another target object. Here, our target object directly selects one of our buttons, and then we also set its property for the button, and then we also give it a red background color. We choose to click a red one to finish, then click the blank space. In this way, when the text is clicked, it not only makes itself change color, but also makes such a button change color. Let's have a look. When I click the text, you can see whether it makes such a button change color in addition to making it change color. Next, the second point is the same trigger object, but it has different trigger conditions. How to understand this? Similarly, let's give it. Here we select such a button. We can see that this button jumps to such a page when it is clicked. If there is such a requirement, that is, when I move the mouse in, make this button turn green. Is it a trigger object or such a button? Therefore, we need to add different trigger conditions to such a button. How can we add different trigger conditions? Notice that we select such a button on the top. When we select this button, we can see that it is a state of being wrapped. Then we click an event plus sign on this side, and we find that there is another event on this side. In addition to being clicked, we select an effect on this side, such as when the mouse is moved and wait, we will change one of its own background colors into a green color, so we will set a property on the same side, and the background color will become a green color. So for such a button, if it is clicked, let the front end jump. If it is just the mouse moving in, let it turn into a green. Let's preview the effect. Now when I enter A, you may ask why I don't respond. Note that we are imitating an iPhone environment. OK, let's take a look at the preview. Move the mouse in green out blue and green out blue in, click to jump to page 2, right? Therefore, in the case of the same trigger object, it can add a different trigger condition. OK, the next step is to add conditions, add multi-conditions, add loops and add callbacks. Let's talk about these together. Let's turn them off first. First, let's look at the first method of adding conditions, that is, you can select which branch you need to add its conditions in. Let's take an example here. For example, if we jump to a page here, it has a condition. Let's select the event, and then click the condition symbol in the upper right corner to see that it pulls a leading line down here, and then this is a condition of it. Let's take an example here, and let's let it enter in the case of 1 is equal to 1. What should I do if I want to put this event under such a condition? We can just drag it in. See here? The whole such a condition has become a golden color, which means that I just want to drag it to this condition to let go again. Now it has become and 1 is equal to 1, and jumping to page 21 is equal to 1, so the condition is satisfied, so it can jump to page 2. Let's preview the effect and click it to adjust to page 2. Similarly, if I change it here, if I say 2 is equal to 1 to jump, I'll try again. We can also see here, because the conditions are not satisfied, he did not carry out the following branch, and pay attention to how we look at the branch here, mainly looking at the lead. The lead is attached to this condition, so he must wait for such a condition to be satisfied before he can carry out such an event. Of course, we can also set a multi-condition here. How to set a multi-condition? You see, under such a condition, we click a plus sign here. You can find that this becomes a combined condition, which is a multi-condition. Therefore, let's take another case where 1 is equal to 1 and 2 is equal to 2. Do you think these two conditions must be met at the same time? Now 1 is equal to 1, 2 is equal to 2, so let's preview the effect. When I click, it does adjust to page 2. Let me change it. If I want 3 is equal to 1 and 2 is equal to 2, is it satisfied in this case? Click again to see if it doesn't jump, so it's not satisfied. But note that among our conditions, in addition to and, another condition is our goods condition, so it is either you meet one of the two, that is, either u3 is equal to 1 or u2 is equal to 2. As long as you meet one of the two, it can jump. So now let's click again to see if it jumps over because it meets the following conditions. Here I'm demonstrating a writing method for you. Note that we add parallel conditions. We must click a plus sign on the right side to add them, rather than adding a condition for them after you select this side, and then you put this condition on it. You can see whether they seem to be parallel, but if you observe carefully, you will find that it is completely different two split conditions. You see, when I select it, it is the above condition. When I use it, it is the following condition, and you can see that the branches in front of it are two completely independent branches. Therefore, we add parallel conditions by clicking the plus sign on the right side. You can see that it is led out by a lead. You must pay attention to this. When we learn the execution sequence of conditions in the next chapter, we will also emphasize it for you. Then, the next step is to add a loop. In fact, the method of adding a loop is almost exactly the same as what we just learned. For example, if I want to add another loop under such a condition, I will select such a condition. Then click a cycle here, and you can see that there is a cycle here. The cycle includes two kinds of cycles, one is the number of cycles, and the other is the conditional cycle. This is also explained in the next section. You just need to learn how to add its event and add its cycle here. There is also an add callback here. Only when the callback happens asynchronously can such a callback be added. The adding method is exactly the same. Select an event that can add a callback, and the callback button will light up. Then, you can click again to add it. Since we haven't learned the next step yet, we'll give a more detailed series of explanations on adding callbacks when we learn the next step. Then we will learn a series of common operations of event. First of all, the first point is a copy of our event. We can see the copy of the event. We can either right-click the copy, or Ctrl-C Ctrl-V makes a copy. In fact, everyone here can do it according to their own preferences. For example, when you see the front end jump to the page here, I can click to make a copy right button. Then, if I want it to trigger a jump page when the mouse goes out, I can select a parent and click paste to see it pasted such an event. Of course, if you right-click, I don't like this operation. Generally speaking, I can paste by selecting a Ctrl-C and then selecting its parent. In addition to selecting its negative level, you can select its peer, but you need to right-click, and then he will tell you whether you want to insert a copied content in the front or a copied content in the back. If you want to insert the copy in front of you, you can see a jump page you just made, and it moves to the front of setting property. Then the next one is the disable of our event. It is mainly to click a small white dot in front of us to carry out an operation. There are three types, namely, disable all the triggering event, or enter a single triggering action, or disable all the triggering actions. Here we will respectively demonstrate them to you. Let's preview the current effect. When I move the mouse in, it's green, right? When I move the mouse out, it jumps to page 2, but I suddenly don't want it to jump 1.2 meters. What should I do? I can click such a small green dot in front of me. You can see that the whole event block will become a gray after clicking, just like a layer of shadow, which proves that the event has been disabled. Let's take a look in Yunnan. Now, when I mouse in, I don't trigger an event like jump page when I go out. This is what we call a single event block disabled. In addition, if you want to enter the whole action, and the mouse goes out of the crane, you don't want to go out of the action. You click the mouse to go out and the front is a little bit white. You can find that the whole piece has become a gray effect. Let's preview it and see the mouse moves in and out normally. You see that removing the color does not have a reset, which means that you disable all the events under the whole triggering condition. Of course, in addition, you can disable all the event related to this widget. How to operate? You can see that there is not an event on the right side of our side. There is a bar to cross out all the event. Then this time, all the events become gray. Then you can disable all the event. Then we can see that once the mouse is in and out, there is no response to clicking, just like this widget does not add any event, and then this is the disable of our event. Then generally speaking, when we start to use high code, we may disable the whole event by a little bit more carelessly, and the whole page will become gray. We must be sharp to find that the only reason why your event is disabled is that your event has not been executed. Then we will learn how to delete an event. In fact, it is very simple. You can select a single event block to delete it. Here we will operate one of the three ways to delete. First, if you add such an event to your expression, you want to delete it. If you select it, there is such a small deletion symbol in front of it. If you click it, you can see that such an event is deleted by you, and then you can also hit it. If you want to delete it by right-clicking it is also possible. Select a block you want to delete, right-click delete, and it will also be deleted. Another situation is that when you select it, you can directly click the delete key above the direction key in the keyboard to see that it has also been deleted, so there are many ways to delete an event. Similarly, if you want to delete all of such an event, you just need to select such a text, that is, the whole event. You can also see it by clicking a delete again, so that the whole event will be deleted by you. Then, it is highly recommended that you delete by clicking the keyboard, but there may be an operation error when deleting. Then, the fallback of this operation has been told to you before. Because it is the fallback of our whole operation, you can click to withdraw even if you delete it by mistake. Then there are two ways to withdraw. The first is that you click a symbol here and click again. Look, the time you deleted just now is back. In addition, there is another way that you can click Ctrl+Z, and it will come back as well. This is the mapping we operate. Therefore, when you delete the event by mistake, you can also recover it by withdrawing it from our operation. And then there is a switch of our event. We can quickly switch between two events. Then it is convenient for us to view multiple event block or perform multiple operations. How does this work? For example, if you look at the event of the text, then I cut to a button like mine, then I look at an event of such a button, and then I go back to operate on an event of the text, what should I do? We don't have to click here anymore. We can click such a button, and it will automatically switch to the time panel we just opened. If you want to go back to the previous world panel, you can also click forward and backward here for an operation. So here, when we may have to make a switch between multiple events, especially the two nearby events, we can directly click the above symbol to make a switch, and then the last and most important point is how to add a note. Adding a note is a very important development habit for us, because you can besides the mechanical reading, it is more important for you to be able to understand the written logic when you see the application again later. Secondly, when others accept your project, others should be able to understand it, so adding notes is a very important habit. Then here we will show you how to add a note. The way to add a note is exactly the same as the way we add an event. If you select it, click a note here. You can also see that there is a note here. Then you can write down some content here. For example, here is the effect of all the way. Such a note will be added. Yes. The above is the whole content of the basic theory of event. Next, we will cooperate with a practical case to facilitate you to deepen a series of understanding of event.